Sten, we're live.
Thank you. That's the world famous voice of Larry, the Liberty Guy, who adored by the millions who watch this show. Welcome to In the Dugout. I am your host, Mike Stenhouse. Big, important show today. The kind of show that everybody has an opinion on. Unfortunately, it's a very emotional issue, the transgender issue, the fairness issue when it comes to women's sports. We're going to try to have a very reasoned and professional and respectful discussion with a couple of women today on this. And I hope, and Larry, the Liberty Guy, will be letting you know how you can weigh in with a question. You can zoom in, you can type your questions in the Zoom, and we'll try to get to those a little bit later in the show. But we definitely are going to be just talking with our two experts in just a few minutes. That's Dr. Michelle Cretella, nationally renowned pediatrician and expert on transgender science, as well as Senator Elaine Morgan, who has put in a bill calling for fairness in women's sports. And so we'll talk to those two women in just a few minutes. Tomorrow, we will have Dr. Andrew Bostom on in the second half of our show. And of course, we'll be talking about all things COVID right there. So again, if you'd like to ask a question, put it in the chat, follow the instructions. If you want to ask it on Zoom with your beautiful face on Zoom for the world to see, Larry, the Liberty Guy, will be putting up instructions on how you can do that as well. Okay, first, before we get to our guests, though, I just want to make a couple comments, and of course, spend a few minutes talking about what's been dubbed the Rhode Island Green New Deal bill that passed the House yesterday after heated and extended debate. But before I get to that, just one quick note on another issue that's very important to us: school choice. As you also know, in this state, there's a legislation out there to put a moratorium on the expansion of charter schools. Those in the Democrat Party who are beholden to the teachers' unions, and that's most of them. And I can see the committee chair are up to their own tricks again. You know, when we sponsored private school choice legislation many years ago, and our bill finally got a hearing, this is what they did to us, even though, you know, they scheduled our bill like the last or the 25th out of 26 bills that day. They didn't even get to our bill. We were there at 4:00. They didn't even get to our bill till 9:00 at night. And then of course, they let everybody who was against the bill speak first for hours and hours. By the time they got to any of us, it was 10:30, 11 o'clock. There were only a handful of people left on the committee chair. And then they even restricted our time. Well, you can see from this headline in Go Local Prov, they did the same thing. Parents are outraged that their kids are being denied choices to improve their lives and their educational options. And apparently they had hundreds of parents, and like us years ago, they kept them waiting. They didn't get to testify. They're saying we're going to put it off to next week. This is how they try to break your spirit. This is how they try to give advantage to their team. It's corrupt. It's wrong. It's non-democratic. It does not allow the voice of the people to be heard. I mean, I want you to think about that. Government officials purposely silencing or trying to silence, if not directly, the voice of the people. When it's legislation or when it's testimony they're not comfortable with. I mean, just think about that. Okay, moving on. The only other issue I'm going to cover before we get to our guests is the Rhode Island Green New Deal bill, as it's been dubbed yesterday. Now, this is a bill, just to remind you, that would empower a third-party group of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats, most of them far-left environmental radical ideologues, to come up with plans that pretty much the state has to enforce, or else, because of a provision in the bill, the state could risk being sued. And further, the bill allows that if then people and businesses don't comply with the provisions, which will be extreme, like maybe having to retrofit your whole house's heating system to inefficient but green electric heat, if you could get sued, a business could get sued by anybody. It expands the issue of the legal question of standing in the state, so that any state agency or private entity, person or individual who doesn't follow the mandates could get sued by anybody else. Now, we had Judge Flanders on this show yesterday, and he said that provision of to broaden the question of who has legal standing to bring a lawsuit to basically to be anyone is probably unconstitutional, because our Constitution, wrongly, but still our Constitution limits who has standing to bring lawsuits in this state. So this bill legally has problems, and practically, as Judge Flanders said, it could create a legal free-for-all where just people are suing everybody all the time, and the only people that win are the lawyers who will collect the fees, or whether they're paid ahead of time or paid after the fact by order of the courts. The real question was not so much whether the bill in the House, the bill had already passed the Senate. The real question was not whether the bill would pass the House, but whether it would pass with such an overwhelming majority that a potential veto from the governor could be easily overridden. So here's the actual vote yesterday. And I want you to take a look at this. It's very interesting. It's right. You need 26 nays to sustain a potential gubernatorial veto. They got close, 22. Everybody here in yellow voted against their party, basically. All these yellows are Democrats who voted against this bill. And there was one Republican here, Fenton Fung, who voted for this bill. If four more of anybody else here in white that's not underlined, if four more of those, if Governor McKee decides to fight and live up to his promises that he will stand up for the business community, which he's been talking a big game on, I got to admit, and we're going to keep an open mind. He's been talking a big game on that. And this is a small business killer. We didn't even mention that necessarily by switching to higher cost, by forcing the state and national grid and other electricity power providers to switch to renewable energy. Renewable energy is far more costly right now, and for the foreseeable future will be more costly, which means if more and more of the portfolio of power has to be green, it's necessarily going to be more costly. You're necessarily going to have to pay more for gas, more for electric, more for heating, more for any energy you use. Necessarily so. Driving up costs on families and businesses alike. Not to mention the risk of lawsuits, not to mention all the regulations and mandates you have to deal with. So Governor McKee, if he allows this bill to pass, if it goes to his desk and he either signs it or he allows it to go into law by not signing it, or if he just perfunctorily, is that right? I don't know if I said that right, but if he just casually does a veto and doesn't fight to sustain it by trying to flip for these votes, he will have betrayed, in my view, his promise to the small business community. And his credibility in that regard will be gone instantly. Instantly. He's worked very hard to build up credibility in the small business community. Now will be the time for him to strut his feathers or not, or his credibility will be gone. So, I don't know who among those are potential. This list of voters you see are potentially flippable. But this is the challenge. Joe Shekarchi has proven that he will give in to the progressive left. He's probably a progressive himself. I heard him on the radio today spreading outright misinformation on this. He's trying to claim that, well, if this third-party environmental committee recommends some plan that the state must adopt or get sued that we don't like, we'll just step in and override it. No, they won't. No, they won't. The General Assembly had that same right to step in and stop the state of emergency that Raimondo falsely extended and is still in place right now. The General Assembly could have stepped in and overridden some of the ridiculous executive orders and restrictions that Governor Raimondo put in using those emergency powers. But they chose not to because they're chicken. They're afraid. They're cowards. So that's a false claim. It's much harder to undo something after it's done in the first place. This bill will allow radical and environmental left policies to be put in place or scheduled to be put in place by a third-party group of radical ideologues. Now, Joe Shekarchi, the Speaker of the House, also said, we have to trust the science. We have to trust the experts. Like we did with Dr. Fauci and all them, the experts who have no idea what they're talking about, whose projections were completely wrong. Remember how we were going to have between 2,500 and 4,400 hospital beds filled, and we never got higher than 400? Remember how mask mandates were supposed to help and save the world, and they didn't save anything in this state? We're among the worst when it comes to infection rates and deaths and hospitalizations for a long time. The experts don't care about the economy. The medical experts, Fauci and them, and those in our state, don't care about what happens economically. They have a narrow focus on the medical issue. These radical leftist environmental group that was empowered by this legislation, or that could be empowered, don't care about you or me or our budgets or the economy. They care only about their narrow, radical environmentalist agenda. Why would we leave any decisions to them and them alone? We have to balance medical and scientific advice with practical, common sense public policy and economics. And that's the job of the legislature. They're giving away their powers to a group of unelected, unaccountable autocrats. It's completely destructive of our Republican and Democratic form of government. Nobody elected these people on this environmental committee on, I don't know, the 4 C's, whatever it is. This bill is horrid. The legal provisions in it, the giveaway of our rights, the cost that will be imposed on Rhode Island families and businesses, and the rush to impose all these harsh and costly mandates. And the kicker is, you know what the kicker is? There's no environmental benefit. Zero. The arrogance to think that little Rhode Island, by hammering families and businesses and individuals to change their way of life, to think that anything little Rhode Island can do is going to have any impact on world global climate is just what I said. It's arrogant when you consider China and its billions of people and its just open pollution, and something we're going to do is going to override that. It's insane. The cost value proposition here is insane. There is no cost benefit value proposition. The costs are enormous. The benefit is zero. Something divided by zero, anything divided by zero, is an irrational number. This bill is irrational. So, Governor McKee, it's all on you. Your credibility is at stake. Our state is at stake potentially. What needs to happen is Governor McKee has shown no leadership. He tried to play it safe. He tried to wait and see how the vote came off, and then that would determine whether he was going to take a veto or non-veto position. But for him, politically, the worst thing happened, and it's going to put him on the hot seat. He can't straddle the fence anymore. There's 53 votes, close enough. If he really wants to fight, he can veto it and sustain the veto. He can't say, I'll never have my veto sustained. And certainly he's, and certainly he's not going to say, oh, well, forget it. There's no chance that I could. Is he going to veto it and fight for it? Or is he going to betray the small business community? We'll find out. We'll find out. All right, let's get to the issue at hand, and let's bring in our guests on the issue of transgender in sports initially, but I'm sure the discussion will evolve into transgender issues generally. But we're going to start with our guests. So let's bring in Dr. Michelle Cretella, and let's bring in Senator Elaine Morgan. Ladies, welcome to In the Dugout.
Thanks for having us.
Now, I don't know, you saw my note. I'm sure you may not want to reply, but we have a tradition in the dugout. Since we're in the dugout, we wear baseball caps.
Uh-oh.
So
I have two. Oh, look at that. Always prepared, right? Always prepared.
Well, we don't want to, we respect ladies' hairdos and all that stuff, but I'm wearing a Rocky Hill hat. This is a private school in Rhode Island that I spoke at some years ago. I don't even know if this bill, but they're K through 12. They have sports teams and all that. I don't know if this bill or this whole transgender thing affects private schools or where they can make decisions on their own. We'll talk about that later, but that's why I'm wearing my Rocky Hill cap that the students gave me there many years ago when I spoke. Now, you ladies don't have to comply with the cap, but
well, we're on Elaine's, we're on Elaine's, Senator Morgan's home turf. She just ran to snatch up two hats.
And if you only want to wear it for 1 minute just to show some spirit, then you can take it off right after that.
All right. Another one for you. All right. Look at that. She even.
See, we like to have
fun.
I'm
black and red. She's even got one matching.
I have one for a tribute to my dad.
And the Army. He was an Army vet?
He was.
Oh, God bless him. Okay. And is Dr. Cretella's hat say anything?
Well, it doesn't. You know what? I ran out of the office. I should have grabbed my Red Sox. We are Red Sox fans, so pretend it says Red Sox.
Well, I'm going to keep mine on. Thank you, ladies, for showing a little spirit. All right, let me just quick backgrounds. Dr. Cretella, you are a Rhode Islander, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you are executive director of the American College of Pediatricians.
Correct. Yep. They're full-time executive director. We're essentially the Hippocratic alternative to the American Academy of Pediatrics. We have remained fully pro-life.
And you've had your specialty. You've been very involved in adolescent sexuality when it comes to pediatric medicine, right? So you've been involved in all kinds of committees and chairs.
And mental health were my my interest both in for 15 years in clinical medicine and for twice as long in terms of research and writing.
All right, so your credentials are long. Anyone can Google you and look them up if they like to learn more. But let's just say, these transgender issues have been something that you've particularly done a lot of research and have formed a lot of opinions on, correct?
That's correct. I think it's important, however, to really emphasize that this bill is, fairness in sports. It's about biology. It's really about.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second. But all I want to establish is that what you have to say coming up, you're very well studied on this, right?
In terms of sex differences and as it relates to all children. Yes. Yeah.
Senator Elaine Morgan, you are now in your third or fourth term?
Fourth term, yes.
You are in your fourth term as senator representing which areas you were at? Hopkinton and
Charlestown,
Richmond,
Hopkinton, Exeter, West Greenwich.
Okay, and you were an honoree of our center a couple of years ago at our banquet for being the top-rated free market
legislator.
in the entire General Assembly.
Yes.
You and Representative Sherry Roberts won the award. You each in the 2-year period were each first and second in consecutive years. So congratulations for being a hero to everybody who supports freedom. So thank you for that. Okay, so the issue at hand initially is the bill you put in, Senator Morgan, Senate Bill 0638, right? What you are calling the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. Can you just give us a very quick overview of what this bill attempts to accomplish?
Correct, Mike. This bill, like we said, or like Dr. Cortella said before, it isn't about transgender. It is about a biological birth of a male who their body is different, their muscle is different, everything. It's not a level playing field because girls are girls, boys are boys. We have the physiological differences, and girls are losing scholarships to boys who are they're more athletic, they're more idyllic. The agility of them is just different, and biologically they're superior. They are stronger than us.
So
I don't think it's fair.
So the bill specifically says what when it comes to that?
I have the bill right here, and
it's essentially upholding what is Title IX, that female, that athletic leagues designed for females and sex specific are there to exclude males in order to maintain a fair playing field for all females and also for their safety. So it's about safety and fair play for girls. It's not a change in the law. It's upholding the true meaning of Title IX, which is rooted in sex differences, and that's biology, genetics, and hormones, biology in terms of genetics.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those arguments in a minute, but as you can see, I have the summary of the actual bill up on the screen. So let's just go through that. So this act would categorize women
or girls
by their gender identity.
No, biological identity.
Biological, yes, rather than
sex,
gender identity.
Sex.
Yep.
This is what it's basically upholding Title IX as Title IX has always been understood.
All right. So first of all, so women as pertains to women's sports would be categorized by their biological identity. Okay. Then it goes on to say a team must be categorized. So first of all, who does this apply to? K through 12 public schools, private schools, colleges? Who does this apply to?
This would apply to secondary schools, K through 12.
Public only or private as well?
If it becomes law, it would be public and private.
It would be.
Yes, I assume it would be, yes.
So even Rocky Hill School would be subject to this. Any school under the auspices of the Rhode Island Department of Education, then, not
Correct.
Just public schools. All right. So you're saying that if they have sports teams, first of all, the schools have to categorize them as male, female, or mixed, right?
The teams, yes.
The teams.
You either have a male team, a co-ed team, or co-ed and mixed are the same, but male, female, or co-ed.
All right, so you're going to match the biological identity of the athlete with the categorization of the team. That's a very simple proposition, right?
Correct.
If there's a dispute, okay, I don't. I guess there could be. Then a physician's statement. What might that entail?
Essentially, they could request that the physician simply record what is in the medical record based on from the student's first visit, at birth.
Biological birth.
If someone claims they're a male or a female and somebody else in the school says, I don't think you are that, then we will basically have a physician settle the issue, right?
Medically speaking, I don't believe the bill goes into this, but medically speaking, a simple note from the physician who's been the family doctor could remedy that, could settle that. If someone were to request a particular test, you can certainly look at hormone levels and genetics.
All right, and then there's a line here about the cause of action. What does this act would create a cause of action for any student who's deprived of an athletic opportunity? What does that mean?
The males participating in the female sports are beating the women. They are taking their scholarships. They are being awarded grants on the physical activity of their performance in a sport. So they need to be.
Girls need to have the ability to sue if that happens.
Okay. All right. So we do have legal resource if somebody either abuses it either way, right? I would assume.
I would assume so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
All right. So this bill is just trying to get some facts out there, and then we'll get into the discussion because we have plenty of time. This bill is sponsored by you. You're the lead sponsor. Senator De La Cruz. I see Senator Lombardo. I also saw in another iteration that Senator Raptakis was on the bill as well. Are those the sponsors of the bill?
Yes.
Okay. And this bill has been, let's see, I'm looking at, this bill has been sent to the Senate Education Committee. Do you expect a hearing? And if so, when?
It will be heard probably within the next couple of weeks. I honestly, the Education Committee is very, how do I describe them? It will probably be held for further study. And we never get a bill passed on its first. This is a brand new bill. I mean, there's probably bugs that have to be worked out of it, and they won't pass it the first time around.
All right, so that's the facts. Let's get into the debate. Okay, so the left will tell you, or I don't know how you want to categorize transgender advocates. I would call them science deniers, but your opponents to this bill would say that this is an infringement on their rights. So let's just talk about rights before we get into the medicine. First of all, why? You call it the fairness in Women's Act. So it can't be both. It can't be an infringement on rights and fair at the same time. So how do we respond to this kind of moral argument here?
So we need to basically just state what they say first. Their claim is that trans girls are girls, trans women are women. So the biological facts are that trans women and trans girls are male-bodied human beings. So
when if you yeah, but still let's not get into the medical yet. Morally,
well, you can't.
Well,
but that is the point. That is the point.
Where are the girls' rights?
Wait. The point is, we have male human beings and female human beings. We have males, some males who identify as trans. We have some females who identify as trans. But biological reality-wise, and that's what athletics depends on, biology-wise, we have males or females. So their moral argument is actually bankrupt.
So basically, you're saying you are just because you declare yourself to be a woman,
yes,
you are not a woman.
Yes,
so
look, genetics. Okay,
yeah.
Genetics is the reason. This is why science is the reason that if a male self-declares as female, it doesn't make it so. Genetics is the reason that if a female self-declares as male, doesn't make it so.
All right. And I want to pick up on what Senator, I know you were trying to jump in on, because I think that's important too. It's really disturbing in this society for any issue, a complaint by a tiny minority of the population who claims a right, and that right infringes on the rights of the much larger majority of the population, and the minority argument wins. You started to say, Senator, what about the rights of all these female athletes? Where do you want to add to that?
Who's protecting them? I'm standing up for women's rights. The women's groups should be all over this. They should be defending girls and women. I was put on a board a few years ago by the governor. It was the board for, oh gosh, what was it? It was to represent women and girls. And I am a female, and I know that competing against a boy, I shouldn't have to do that. And excuse me a minute, I have to let my dogs out.
Yeah. Okay. So doctor, you I'm sure you've looked at the moral and medical issues of this. Let's extend it not just to sports, but even to bathrooms.
Oh, hold on. No, let's not.
Let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
Wait, let's stick with the issue at hand,
All
which is sports. Show me where in this bill, and you won't find it. Show me where in the bill it says that trans-identified youth are barred from sports. They are not.
Right. That
This
male
bill-
could still play on a men's team, right?
This bill is designed, it's based on biological science, biological facts, and this bill is solely designed for the safety and fair play of female athletes. Nowhere in this bill does it bar any trans-identified athlete from competing in sports. It's holding all youth, regardless of identity, it holds all youth to the standard of biology.
So to be clear, a male who identifies as a female could still play male sports.
Sure.
Correct?
And that could still play co-ed sports.
Or co-ed sports.
And a female who identifies as male can still play on a female team or in co-ed sports.
Okay.
You're not barring them from sports.
We are not barring any youth from sports. We are protecting the athletic rights, the health and safety of female student athletes.
And I agree. We tend to think of, we see a lot of images of track, softball, but when you consider contact sports.
Right. Now you're talking.
Now there's danger, right? When one person is physically and biologically, as the senator said, superior to another. That's not superior intellectually, morally, anything else, but physically, it's absolutely true in most cases. I mean, there are some women who some men.
When you match males and females for athletic training, the males will be larger, faster, and stronger than the females when they are matched for training. And what you raised, it's interesting because what the other side will say is, well, my trans girl, this male athlete doesn't come in first against the girls. And my point is, look, genetically speaking, every cell in that male body is still male. That male student is still taking a place. I don't care if the male student comes in last every time against girls. That is still a male student girls should not have to compete against. He is stealing a female position.
Yeah, scholarships, and it's just flat out unfair. I mean, it's just unfair. Now,
what's the point? If you're going to have, either you have female sports and male sports, or you just make everything co-ed. But don't pretend you're doing women any justice, because you're not. See what I'm saying?
Yep. There's also another point I'll make that I'm not going to ask you to make because it's probably too politically sensitive for you to make. But in the real world, when you make choices, there are consequences. So you can't have your cake and eat it too in every instance, in every part of life. If you choose to be transgender, there are certain things to that. You make any choice in life, there are consequences, and in a real meritocracy like we are supposed to have in this country, that's a factor too. That's not a very politically popular one, and nothing I'll even ask you to comment on. I'm just going to inject my commentary there. But I will stress, I will ask you just to, again, to appease you, no matter what kind of surgery you have, no what kind of hormones you take, and no matter how many times you click your heels together and wish it to be true, a male cannot become a female biologically. Correct?
Correct.
Genetically,
That's-
biology.
Yes.
Not.
You know, a male taking estrogen is going to lose muscle mass and strength.
Yeah.
He'll alter some of his other physiology, but at the cellular level, you can still tell the difference between male muscle fibers and female muscle fibers. At the cellular level, genetically speaking, that male remains a male no matter what drugs, no matter what surgery the male is given. So, you know, again, if we allow males onto female teams, we are, and vice versa, females onto male teams, we are basically just saying, okay, it's a co-ed free for all. And girls are the ones who will suffer in terms of safety and fair play.
And to your larger point, you know, when I was in, I don't know exactly when Title IX came in, but when I was in high school, there was in Cranston East. I don't have a Cranston East hat. I got to get one, but there was a great disparity between the sports offered to boys and the sports offered to girls.
That's right.
And then I went on to college. I think it was right around that time, the late 70s, that Title IX came in, maybe earlier. I don't exactly remember. I don't know if any of you know. But anyway, Title IX did such a great job in equalizing athletic opportunities for men and women. And all those years of precedent, all those years of fighting for equal opportunity could be washed away if this
absolutely
gets out of hand, right?
As I said, if you allow one girl onto the male team and one boy onto the female team, you have co-ed sports. There is no, you know, and in co-ed sports, the girls are the ones who are going to suffer in terms of, as I said before, in terms of safety and in terms of winnings,
Agility.
justice. Yeah.
All right, before we get into some examples that I know you're prepared to discuss either in testimony or on the show, or probably have discussed in many other forums, Doctor, let me ask the Senator this. Senator Morgan, so what kind of response in the legislature, among the cancel culture, have you received since you sponsored this legislation?
No one has actually confronted me on it. With COVID, we're separated, and, you know, no one has really, as far as the General Assembly, no one has approached me with it. So I haven't, the feedback that Senator Reptakis took his name off of it. He received a lot of, the LGBTQ group sent, what is it called? It was a standard email of just just an email. You know, what are they called when they copy what they say?
Template.
A template email has been sent. I received a few, and it's just from that community.
All right, and would you say that this bill really, I mean, I know you said there'll be a hearing, and you said it would be held. I mean, all bills are held, but it's a question of whether they're held permanently or not. But would you say this bill has any chance of passage this year in Rhode Island?
I would say probably not.
I mean, other states are passing bills like this.
They are. I think in Rhode Island, we have such a progressive, not that there's an overwhelming progressive there's not overwhelmed. It's just they are the noisiest. They are the people, the progressives, maybe only a few, but they're the ones who are getting involved. They're the ones who are trying to change our state. They're trying to change our culture. That's another, specific. There's another
Yep.
movement going on right now to try to change, the schools and critical race theory. And I mean, those are the people who have been coming after me about it.
All right, let me ask this, and I don't know this. I don't know if either of you know this. What is the current law in our state right now when it comes to this biology question in male female sports? Does it demand access for instance biological males into female sports, or is it just silent on it and it's a decision up to each school district or each school? I mean, what is the current law or mode of standard operating procedure right now in this state?
The atmosphere is no one wants to touch it. And no one wants to argue because they'll be called racist. They'll be called transphobic. That's what I'm being called.
I get that from an advocacy point of view, but if there's a transgender male who wants to play female sports, what will happen right now in this state?
So I can tell you that right now, what we have on the books is Title IX. And that would have been interpreted as any male needs to stay on a male team until 2016, when 2014 to 2016, Obama came out with his advice. It wasn't law. He had no authority to give this colleague letter.
Yep, his directive.
But he specifically said that you may be in danger of losing federal funding if you do not include gender identity as sex in Title IX. So when he said that, Rhode Island's RIDE did.
Rhode Island Department of Education.
Yeah, they did adopt a progressive view. Whether trans students are allowed to play or not is probably very much dependent on the particular school community itself, but which is why this law is very much needed.
So legally, hold on one second, Larry. Legally, there's kind of silence on this issue, right? While there's this informal, not necessarily directive, it's not law, right?
Right, it's not law. You can go to the Rhode Island Department of Education website, and if you search enough, you will see that teachers and staff are directed not to alert parents, for example, if a child wants an alternate gender identity. Yeah. So
do we know any transgender males playing in female sports in Rhode Island right now?
I do not know.
I do not know.
Okay. Larry, Liberty Guy.
Stan, we have Roland on the line. Do you want a question from Roland?
Quick question from Roland. Let's go.
Roland, unmute yourself.
Hey, Roland, welcome into the Dugout. What's your question for one of our guests?
Roland, *6. Roland, try it now. *6.
There we go.
Hello.
Hey, Roland, what's your question?
Okay, it's for Senator Elaine Morgan. Senator, I totally agree with your bill. It's basically, to back up the Title IX. Recently, Governor Kristi Noem kind of made some national news for actually vetoing a similar type of bill because it wasn't litigious proof, as you want to call it. It was threatened by the NCAA. Have you received any pushback from any scholastic league in Rhode Island?
No, I have not.
Yeah, that's a great question, Roland. My understanding of that was she says she vetoed it. She supports the initiative, but she says she vetoed because it would have covered colleges in her state, and she didn't want to get into a legal dispute with the NCAA. So I think she said, I'm going to veto it. I'm going to send it back, and I want you to make it just apply to K through 12. Is that your understanding of it, Dr. Catella?
That was my understanding of it, yes. And Alliance Defending Freedom really took her to task for that.
Yeah, do you think that was you make an opinion, it's not a medical opinion, but do you think that was the proper political move to make to narrow it to just
It absolutely is a medical opinion. I'm sorry. Even the athletes in
Okay,
college
go ahead. Go
are
ahead.
still genetically and biologically male or female. Absolutely. That was.
So, I mean, but politically, she's saying, I don't
biologically
want to take
speaking,
on.
She made the wrong decision, and I would say politically speaking, she made the wrong decision as well.
Okay, so legally,
This is-
maybe
you
the
gotta-
legal decision, she didn't want to take on the NCAA. That was a little
Which
bit
is
of a.
ridiculous. Which is
Okay.
ridiculous because
Okay.
the
Mike?
line in the sand. Look, we live in the physical world, and sex is a physical, biological, genetic fact. If we can't frame, I mean, our sex is about the core of our human identity, and if we can't agree on the definition of
divine.
humanity, how can we have any human rights? You don't have human rights if we can't agree on the fact that human beings are sexed. They are embodied sexed people. And if you can't agree on that basic physical definition, then forget it.
Yeah.
Why even you forget it? Forget
Yeah,
everything else in society.
I would even say it's divine. Roland, do you have another quick question?
Mike, Mike,
Go ahead, Roland.
yeah, it's kind of an oddball question, so it can go for either Senator Morgan or the good doctor. You know, in sports, you can't take any performance enhancement drug because it gives you a competitive advantage over your field. Could the argument be made that a transgender male has a performance enhanced state over the competing field?
Great
So,
question.
okay. So all right. So a male who identifies as female, even if he is taking estrogen, still has, and so the short answer to your question is yes, because a male who identifies as female, and even if he is taking estrogen, still has advantages from his natural testosterone in puberty. And so the short answer is yes, you're right.
Now, that brings up a question I've been meaning to ask a lot, and I'm glad. So I mean, again, this is not so much a medical question, it sort of is, but what qualifies as identifying as your non-biological sex? Is it just a statement?
Yes.
Do you have to have undergone hormonal treatment or physical? It could just be a simple statement on any given day.
Yes. The two let's see, Andrea Yeager, one of the two Connecticut students who literally ran away with state titles in girls sports. Initially, when he started competing as a girl, he was not on any estrogen or blockers.
So to Roland's point, not every transgender male is on some kind of hormone or drug,
this is
right?
where the language is crazy because a trans girl is a male. So not so trans girls are males.
Okay, yeah.
It doesn't mean.
So let me rephrase
even on
any male, not necessarily every male who identifies as a woman is necessarily on some kind of drug or
That's
hormone.
right. No,
Okay.
right.
So they could still have their full, they could be
Yes.
drug-free. They could have their full
male
testosterone
capacity.
and male everything. Okay. Wow.
Correct.
All right. Dr. Kratel, I know you've got a number of examples in track and field in various states. Would you like to cite a few of those and discuss why they're important for our audience to know?
Sure. Now, again, we're doing this now before it becomes widespread. But the few examples that I did cite, CC Telfer, collegiate athlete, male, won 3 titles in the Northeast 10 championships for women's track and received the most outstanding track athlete award.
High school level?
That was collegiate level.
That was collegiate.
That was maybe just a couple of years ago. Another one that I mentioned again, Andrea Yeager and Terry Miller are 2 males who identify as females from Connecticut. And they, in the last couple of years, have repeatedly taken top awards in girls state track in Connecticut. And they, some very brave girls and their families have actually sued the state of Connecticut for allowing males to compete in female sports, and that's making its way through the courts. Alliance Defending Freedom is arguing that case.
Now, as we discussed earlier, and I think I know where you're going next, track and field is one thing, but now we get into a contact sport like mixed martial arts. Talk about what happened there.
Yeah, and this was a few years back. Fallon Fox is a male. Fallon Fox identifies as female. Mixed martial arts came up against a top MMA female competitor, Tamika Brents. He fractured her eye socket and gave her a severe concussion. She came very close to death. And even at that, this woman, Tamika Brents, was faced with such harassment that she was afraid to say, well, that happened because he's male. All she could say is, I never felt so overpowered in my life. Maybe, and I don't know why. But she was, this is truly, truly about protecting girls and women's health, safety, and opportunity for fair play. Biology is not bigotry. When you're talking sports and athletics, biology is not bigotry.
Well,
we're not barring anyone from playing sports.
And biology is science, is it not?
I guess they want to have it both ways, but
there you go.
There's, as you said, this is pure science denialism. To say that a trans girl, a male, is a girl, that is like the ultimate science denial right there.
Ultimate. It can be biologically proven
even in
to
the
be
dark
true.
ages. Even in the dark ages, they knew what a girl or a boy was.
All right, after you click
we
your
are beyond the dark age here.
I'm going to be cynical here, but after you click your heels together and wish, if a male clicks his heels together and wishes he was a girl, does his XY chromosomes change?
No, they do not.
No, and neither do any of the sex differential genetics in any of his cells. There are 3,000 genetic differences in muscle cells between males and females. So this is just
3,000. Wow.
And that's in the muscle fibers, the genetics of muscle fibers. There's sex differential genetics.
So you heard my opening comments on the Green New Deal bill. I listened to the whole floor debate yesterday. I listened to Speaker Shikarchi on the radio today. And their main argument is we got to go with the science. We have to go with the science. We have to go with the science. Of course, we know how narrow-minded scientists can be. Just look at Dr. Fauci and others, as I commented. They don't care about anything else but the science. But they want to go with the science. But I bet you if we had every one of those people, they wouldn't want to go with the science on this issue, would they?
That's correct. And actually, I would say that the people you referenced with regard to the COVID, like Fauci and so forth, they aren't with the science.
Right. That was proven.
They're not with the science. That again is another science denial, because they stuck with those modelers who were so blatantly off base for so long. And that's really what we suffer from the most is a lack. It's the suppression of true scientific debate. It's the cancel culture that is only allowing a narrative to be put forth, whether it is true science or not.
Senator Morgan, is there anything you'd like to advise any viewers that they can do to help your bill gain some attention and maybe to move along?
All I would ask is that you contact your local representative or senator. I don't know if there's a sponsored side on the House of the bill yet.
I looked using some similar language. I did not see one on the House side.
Hmm.
but not using the exact same language anyway. If there was a bill using different language, I didn't see it.
Well, now is the time with Zoom. It's making it so much easier to participate in these discussions. So you don't have to wait hours at the State House. You can call in on the Zoom, or actually we use Meet,
Google
Microsoft
Meets
Meet,
or Microsoft.
Microsoft Meets.
Yeah. Doctor,
Um,
okay. Dr.
so-
Cretella, will you testify when this bill has a hearing?
Yes, I plan to.
Do you know, is there any, listen, we know, I don't even know how to ask this question of the doctor. I have heard actual doctors deny the science
Oh.
and
This is,
take the opposing.
this is an
How
agenda.
does that happen?
It is an agenda that this is academia. Academia, whether it's academic medicine, psychiatry,
COVID.
history, etc. Right? This is a loyalty to a Marxist worldview, whether they understand that or not. That's what we are dealing with ultimately.
Indoctrination.
It starts from the top, the minority of physicians in academia who control what gets taught to the medical schools or recommended as standards. If you could actually have conversations with physicians on the ground, the majority of physicians on the ground will say, yeah, a boy, a male, is the member of the species who produces sperm, and a female is the member of the species who produces eggs, and it's that simple. But yeah, no, I mean, as an example, there's the director of the gender clinic at Duke University has outright said that it is unscientific to rely on chromosomes, reproductive organs, and secondary sex characteristics to override gender identity to determine whether one's male or female.
To override
Maybe.
chromosomes?
Right. And, I will just say, just briefly, 99.98% of the time, 99.98% of the time, if you have a Y chromosome, you will have a male body. There are some people who have birth defects. Essentially, that's what they are, is birth defects, either genetic defects or hormonal defects, but from birth, that 0.02%, you might have, it might be hard to tell, are you male or female, or your sex chromosomes won't match up with your appearance. Those are birth defects. And we know that they're abnormalities because these individuals have either infertility or at least reduced fertility. They're not a different sex. They are males or females with conditions, intersex conditions. But that is totally separate from transgender identification.
Okay. Now, you said something a little while ago, use a term, an explosive term that I'm going to bring back to, but I'm looking at some of the comments here. Al Testa in particular had made a couple of comments, but you mentioned Marxist, but they're certainly using Marxist techniques.
Marxist techniques, yes.
To suppress science, to suppress the truth, to indoctrinate, as Senator Morgan said, and to forcibly accept us, force us to accept their propaganda. I mean, that's really all this is.
And unfortunately, and others, Jennifer Billick is a radical feminist and investigative journalist who has looked into who is financing the transgender movement, and it is, it's several very wealthy white males. She has done articles on this.
Really?
And in addition to, she has looked at big pharma. So I do recommend listeners, look into Jennifer Billick, Bilek, investigative journalist, radical feminist. There are radical feminists who I work with on this issue because they are saying, hey, this is the erasure of all females.
Well, yeah, you would think so. So, and what are you finding? I don't know, Elaine, if you've bumped into it in Rhode Island, or Dr. Cretella, if you've bumped into it nationally, but these women's groups must really be torn on this, because they're sworn to this leftist progressive agenda, but yet it's destroying women's rights, which is what Senator Morgan's trying to protect in athletics right here. How have you seen most of these national or international women's groups come down on this issue, or are they just chicken out and be silent?
The vast majority of mainstream feminist groups are financed by the folks who refuse, that are financed by groups and individuals who are behind the transgender agenda. So these feminist groups are marching along with them, not recognizing, basically believing the born that way and lie, when it's a very narrow stream of radical feminists who basically recognize, hey, biology isn't bigotry. If we embrace transgenderism, you're not only erasing females, you're also erasing LGBT categories, for example.
Moms and dads.
And you erase, yeah, you erase sex. You erase sex. If we embrace the gender ideology, you erase sex, and you have to completely rewrite our laws. And
they already rewrote the law on that with mother and father. They took mother and father out of the biology of. There was a bill last year, and I think Rep. Price and myself were the only ones who voted against it, because we actually read and understood what they're trying to do.
I know that, Bill. I saw that. Yep, I heard the whole testimony on that. I don't know that it has direct relevance to this athletic question. Well, what I'm about to ask Dr. Cretella, but I think it does somehow, and I'll ask you to tie it in. But isn't it also true that a large number of people who identify to their non-biological sex end up reversing?
So we are, all right, anecdotally now, we are believing that to be true, especially if they were young teen girls. If they were teen girls who believed they were boys, actually went through with blockers, the hormones, double mastectomies, there does seem to be quite an influx now of young women saying, oh my gosh, what did we do? Our counselors just immediately affirmed us as transgender, didn't question our thinking, didn't address any of my depression, anxiety, their multiple psychiatric issues. So we are seeing it. We don't have the statistics because the studies are not allowed. The studies are not allowed.
The truth is being suppressed.
There is
being suppressed.
Yeah. I will tell listeners, if you go Google the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. This is a very brave group of mostly liberal physicians and therapists. It's international, and they are writing on these issues, and they are starting to try, to initiate studies on that. But we've got a long way to go.
You may choose not to answer, but I just really wanted to ask you about one related, again, not sports specific. Would you accept one question in that regard?
Sure.
I saw that recently a circuit court struck down, I think it was a Florida law, like the law we have in Rhode Island, that bans therapists from working with, again, whatever you want to call it, gender confused, gender dysphoric youth. They're actually banned from having a therapeutic, honest discussion with young people in this regard.
Right. So these are, so around the country, I believe it's roughly 29 states have counseling choice bans. They call them conversion therapy bans, but in fact, they are taught there. This is about talk therapy. They are counseling choice bans, such that if for minors, such that if parents have a child with either unwanted, unwanted sexual attractions and or gender identity issues, counselors by law are required to affirm them in their unwanted sexual attractions and affirm them as transgender. Therapists are not allowed to question the gender identity. The reason the law was struck down in Florida is that the counselors who sued the county demonstrated that it's simply that you can't bar professional speech when they have, and these were two counselors who actually I'm friends whom I'm friends with, when they have children and families that they are working with, they are working on underlying issues, resolving traumas, depression, in which in during those conversations, it may come out that, gee, you know what, I think this contributes to me not, to me hating my body, or to
Being attracted to the same
or being
sex.
attracted to the same sex, or what. So they won their case. And
Would that have an impact potentially if someone challenged it on the Rhode Island law, on the Rhode Island ban?
what
not a lawyer.
we believe, and I'm not giving away any secrets, but we expect that case to eventually make its way to the Supreme Court, and because this is about it's a violation of the U.S. Constitution. It's a violation of our right to free speech. Professional speech between counselors and clients, families, patients is not exempt from constitutional protection.
All right, Senator Morgan, the final word is yours if you'd like to just wrap up, since it's your legislation that has spurred this discussion.
I just want to make it clear that it isn't about transgender. This is not what it's about. My total concept here is to protect girls and women and to protect sports. I'm not a transphobe. I am not against the LGBT community. They have their rights and girls have theirs. We have to protect girls, and I am here to protect rights of individuals.
Very, very good point and focus to put on that. Dr. Cretella, Senator Morgan, thank you for joining us on the Dugout. After we have the hearings, we'd love to have you back and let us know how you thought they went, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you. Have a good day, and thank you for taking a strong principled stand. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up. We went a little long, but this is an important topic. But, I think the two issues we discussed today, my commentary on the Green New Deal bill, and then this Fairness in Women's Sports Protection Act, really shows you the hypocrisy and inconsistency of the left. All over the map. First, when it comes to the Green New Deal, or as we've seen for the last year from the left on COVID, we have to rely totally on the science, totally on what the experts say, regardless of anything else, regardless of the economic impact, regardless of the human or societal or social impact, regardless of how many suicides or antidepressant drugs are being prescribed. We've got to do whatever the scientists who have such narrow views say. Even though we know the scientists are often wrong, and even though we know scientific considerations should not be the only considerations. And now when it comes to this bill, you will hear from the left arguments that absolutely defy science in a provable, 100% provable way. Medical, scientific way. Science, when it comes to public policy, is one piece of the consideration. Consistently, it should be, scientists and doctors should advise, should put their opinions out, put the reports out, and lawmakers should take that in and consider that along with the economic, moral, societal, and human impact, and then come up with the best policy. But science is not everything. But science is not, also cannot be ignored. It's one piece, and it should always be a piece of everything we do. Economics is a science, but that was denied in the COVID considerations. Economics is a science. It's a social science, but that was denied in the Green New Deal debates. Science is a piece of the puzzle. It must be respected, but it's not everything. Right? It's not everything, but it has to be respected. In this case, the scientific, there is no question on this protecting women's sports. There's no question of the science. Now it's up to lawmakers to make the right public policies based on that. So again, but the left just, we all know how hypocritical and arbitrary and self-serving they are. They try to have it every way. They get it every way because the media lets them get away with it. It's that simple. All right. Thank you for watching. Long show today. Great show today. Tomorrow, Dr. Andrew Boston, the bottom of the hour.